Hello and welcome to Love Work Life Training Academy webinar, Conducting Client Visits, live and virtual. I hope everyone's fit and well this afternoon and being fully fed for this session. Just so I can make sure everyone can hear me, if you can drop some names into, yes, I can hear you into either chat or question and answer box, much appreciated. People are flying in today. There's lots and lots of people on the webinar. Okay, so there's people from, let's go through the sort of companies that are here. There's G2, Athwell Resourcing, the One Group, Impact, Seneca Search, G2 Group, Requirement Consulting, Westway, Truly Tailored, Helm Recruit, Corecom, Alliance Empire, Experis, big boys are in. May Stevenson's, Required Consulting, JLS Consulting, Invictus, 300 North, Change Recruitment, Taste Hospitality, Chain Recruits, Bonbon, ARV, Hall Recruit, Star Recruit, TTS 24/7, Prosper IS, Amicus, Aventus, Legal, IB Specialists, and a few more. Lots of personal email addresses, Gmail, and what have you. So welcome to all. Still probably just over 70 people now sort of signed in. We're still waiting for just a few more. So just very, very quickly, as we kick off, we've got quite an action-packed meeting today to go through everything that we've done. So client visits. It's interesting. I've just been on a webinar speaking to managers. And one of the big things that we were talking about was what was the difference will be when we sort of go back to recruitment and back to the new norm. And one of the things that I think will be very different is the way that we interact with our clients, and visiting clients, whether it be virtually or whether it be face-to-face, is going to be very important, especially if you want to create a new style of recruitment and be more caring and nurturing with your clients. It's interesting when I go out and see clients and I'm doing coaching and mentoring with the management teams, etc. And a lot of them state that they go out and they see their clients constantly. And yet when I speak to clients, I get completely opposite, that they very seldom meet their recruiter. So there's an opportunity here to really sort of change that and really do what we should be doing. And this course is all about looking at conducting a client visit, and I'll cover whether it virtually or whether it be face-to-face as we go. And I think it's important that we set that tone straight away, is that to get more out of our clients, we need to understand our clients. As I've said under here on the opening page there, understanding your empire is really important. And the more we understand our empire, the more we'll get from our empire. So it's important that we understand our client marketplace and penetrate that marketplace properly. So let's sort of get stuck into today. So the objectives of today, there's plenty of objectives in today's course. The objectives of today is why client meetings are important, asking for meetings, how to prepare your meetings, the meeting structure, the power of a good fact find, why testing your position is vital, when not to sell, what questions you can ask during the fact find, shopping lists, what to sell, handling objections, and closing with actions. Now, as most of you know who's been on these courses, lots of people have been on virtually all the courses, so thank you very much. And there's quite a lot of new people on today's courses, which is great as well. So welcome to all of those people as well. What you'll understand is that I am very old-fashioned in the way that I do my recruitment. And to me, it's about the core basics and getting the core basics right. However, I'm also a bit of a revolutionary. I love new technology and I love new things coming into the marketplace. So I've been called the other week, I was called old school with a new broom. And so we're going to look at that very much in this way during this course, on what is old school and what is new school and what the difference it makes. So as a consultant, the benefits of meeting clients is really important. And we've got to start to understand why we should meet our clients properly and not just have a telephone conversation and hope that passes muster. You know, we need to create a stronger relationship with our buying points. People buy more from people that they have met, but really what they actually buy more from is people that they have met and that they like. And so really putting a face to a name is so important nowadays. And the more we put a face to the name, the more we will get back from our client. So we need to make sure that we meet them properly, whether it be virtual or face-to-face. We need to take a better understanding of the job specification. And that means having clarity. Clarity saves time and prevents confusion. And that's from both sides. If you have clarity from a really good job specification, you have the opportunity to either work the job or walk away. If you have clarity and understanding from your client, you can understand how invested your client is in the actual job specification. So meeting a client is really important to start to understand how much they are actually invested in you as a recruitment agency when job specifications start to come through. We need to get a better understanding of the client's environment. We need to look for selling points to the candidate. We need to look for things that the candidate is like to buy. We need to understand why the client is working there. So if we can start to understand the benefits of that company and why working for that company is important, then we start to get a bigger picture. But understanding that is understanding the fabric of the business, stood inside a client. And I've worked with lots of different clients when I've had that visualization of what that client is like. And when I've rolled up, very, very different. And I remember working with a client over in Goole in Hull. And the client was talking high-end technical recruitment for the pharmaceutical industry. And I had this vision of white labs. I had this vision of what the business was like. It was only when I got there did I realize that the IT department that I was working with, trying to recruit for, they were outside. Not only were they outside in a porter cabin, but they were outside in the porter cabin across a rather muddy field. So that means anyone walking to the porter cabin, if it was wet, would be sinking in about 6 inches of mud. The porter cabin leaked. So my view of what the IT guys were walking into was completely different, but that gave me an opportunity to make the candidates understand what the client environment was truly like. So it's important that you really get to understand that and work that. You need to be able to sell your recruitment solution properly and confirm your solution and tailor it to your client's needs. And I always think when I'm selling something to somebody, if I can look somebody in the face, if I can see their facial expressions and I can understand what they're thinking and talking about, then I can sell so much more. I can establish a true rapport with that client. And to understand that and sell my solution, I have to understand what my client truly wants. And I think meeting clients face to face, whether that be virtually or whether that be physically, is important when we're selling our solution. We need to establish potential threats. And it's very interesting when we talk about potential threats. What I talk about is outside and internal threats. So our competitors, legal, finance, making sure who we're meeting is a genuine person who can sign things off. I want to understand what's going on in the company. A potential threat could be, as what I've just talked about, the client site not be ideal for work purposes, etc. So I've got to make sure that I understand what my potential threats are for working with this client and getting candidates to bond with this client. I want to create loyalty. I want to make sure my client is loyal to me and that my client becomes what I would class as a sticky client, a client that sticks to you constantly and we can work with them constantly, irrespective of whether that client is working in this company or they move to another company. It's about creating loyalty with your client is really important. Once you start to create true loyalty, then you're starting to add value to your client. I want to create urgency. If I can create urgency with the client, then I start to control the process more. And the more I control the process, the better opportunity I have of getting candidates towards the end of the process. So meeting my client and creating genuine urgency and understanding what they need is really, really important. And the last thing I want to do is secure business. And I find it a lot easier when I'm talking exclusive and retained business to get them to sign on the dotted line. If they can see me, they understand what I'm talking about, and I can see them and they understand what I want to get from them and why I'm asking that. And I think that starts to drive the relationship so much deeper than it is at the moment. At the moment, there's a lot of transactional recruiters out there. And I think as the market starts to change, those transactional recruiters are going to suffer from what I call market blindness. They're going to suffer from not understanding how clients and people feel about interacting with each other. And as we come out of this period, how we interact with people is going to be so important. Humans are based on interacting with each other. And so to secure that type of business, the more you interact with them on a personal level, a face-to-face level, the more you will get from them. So it's important that we meet our clients. Now with video technology, this makes it so much easier. However, what we have to do is ensure that we separate ourselves from a sales call that we've put onto a video to a client meeting that we've created via video technology. There are two different things that we need to look for, and it's different in the way that we present ourselves to the client. Over the phone, we can present ourselves in any way we like, because over the phone, they can't see what you're doing. Over the phone, they can't see the background. Over the phone, they can't hear what's going on in the background. Here, they can. They can start to see what your company's like. They can start to see what's going on within the company. They can start to see what you are like as a person, and therefore they bond with you. So it's about really securing business and securing everything that we need to do. So it's how to unlock client meetings. Again, why would a client turn down a request to meet you? Sometimes I think it's not in the asking, it's how we actually ask the question. And when dealing with consultants, I've often found it was how they asked the question that actually prevented them from gaining client meetings. The difference between a client meeting and a sales call is a client meeting is something that is actually booked in a diary. You are physically either going to meet them or you are meeting them over a virtual platform. But that booking that in the diary suddenly makes it so much more. It adds more gravitas. It adds more quality to what's going on. So we've got to make sure that we get those things booked into the diary. So this is the things that I generally hear constantly all the time from people who are asking for meetings. I get closed questions and I get an alternative close. What I get is, when are you free to meet? And generally clients say, I'm not free to meet. And that sort of stops the question and stops the conversation moving forward. So I like to change that to, I'm in your area next Wednesday and Friday. What days are you free to meet? And that's when I want to really drive a genuine face-to-face meeting. I sometimes get, can I come and meet you? And the answer usually is no, because it's such a close question. I get a yes and no answer. I'm meeting a candidate on Monday who's not far from you. Can I call in on Monday for a coffee and get a better understanding of your business? So I'm telling him I'm not coming in for a long meeting. I want to just come in and drop in. But I'm telling him that I'm also meeting a candidate that should prick his interest and create that desire for them to maybe want to meet you afterwards, depending on the market knowledge that you've got and gained. We're now also talking about video meetings. Okay. So before I brief my team on a role, I'd like to do a virtual meeting via video so that I can ensure I've captured not only the job specification, but also the essence of working for you. Let's book a date in the diary now so we can start the process ASAP. So I'm going to drive that into as an alternative close rather than just ask, can we have a video meeting? I would also ask how they want to meet, face-to-face, video, or over the phone. I want to understand what their partials is for that meeting. They might not want to meet face-to-face at the moment because of social distancing, and as that starts to relax, that might still be the case. So video might be our best interest. You may get a client, though, that might want to go the other way. I'd rather meet face-to-face than over video. So we've got to make sure we're asking both ways to make sure that we understand what our client actually needs. Would it be possible to take the job specification from you? No, is generally the answer that I get. I'm too busy. Can I, just take the job spec that's given to me? We need to make sure we drive in there. I've taken a great job spec over the phone, but to ensure I have the right candidate, I would like to visit the site to get a more in-depth understanding of the business, which prevent you from interviewing the wrong candidate. Or are you free next Tuesday or Wednesday? Again, so I'm putting alternatives in and I'm driving alternatives all the way through the process. So I'm looking to give the client opportunities. One thing that I always say as I'm sat here now and I'm talking to you, I will ask, have you got your diary open? And the obvious answer, if you're sat there in front of a PC, you will have an opportunity to have a diary open. Ask them to open the diary and ask them what dates they are free, or have they got a free slot in their diary. Find the earliest slot and then book an interview into that slot by sending them a diary invite. Now, whether that's a face-to-face invite or whether that's a Zoom or a Teams or whatever it be invite, you book that into their diary. Once it's booked into their diary, it's harder for them to turn that meeting down or to stop you actually meeting with them. So you can start to create rapport right from that first question. And the biggest area I see people going wrong when trying to unlock a client meeting is they ask closed questions. When are you free to meet? Can I come and meet you? I'd like to come and meet you. And all they're getting is rebuttal after rebuttal. And what we need to make sure is that we're getting the opportunity to open them up. So using alternative closes constantly, I find, gets you the end result of a client meeting. So, what can go wrong before we get a meeting, or once we've booked a meeting? What can go wrong? And I always think that we need to start to do a checklist. Now, this is irrespective of a checklist for a meeting face-to-face or a meeting via video. So my checklist always is, I want to confirm everything in writing. So I confirm location, I confirm it via video. So if I'm doing it by Zoom or I'm doing it by Teams or Hodro or interview, I am sending a link so they have a link straight away. I want to confirm the time and date. Now I'm old fashioned. I want to confirm the agenda. By confirming an agenda and sending an agenda, it tells the clients the type of questions that you're going to ask. And so it prepares the client for the type of meeting that you're going to undertake. It also starts giving an idea of the objectives that you want to achieve from that meeting. So I always send an agenda out to a client so they understand what we're going to be talking about and the reasons why we're talking about that. I want to know who will be attending the meeting from their end. Is it just going to be that person, or are there going to be other people in there? The last thing I want to do is walk into a meeting and feel ambushed by lots of other people. So I want to make sure that I've got a check of exactly what's going on. So I send a diary invite, okay, constantly. I email the diary invite, and they must confirm the invite. So I'm making sure they confirm that invite back. So I want to make sure that they are committed. Too often, before the internet came around, before Microsoft came about, etc., going up to clients and meeting clients, and the clients either forgetting that they were having a meeting, just weren't there full stop, and forgot completely that I was coming, etc. Why? Because I'd never sent a diary invite. I soon learned after 3 or 4 of those things, the more I book in, the more I confirm, the more I make sure that they know I'm coming, the better the opportunity is. We'll talk about this later on other things, okay? I always call the day before to confirm that I am ready to meet them, confirm that if I'm traveling there, that I've got a plan, route, for the train, the time, I understand the car park, but I also want to check the dress code just in case. And irrespective what they say to me, I understand what I must dress like. I want to understand if the dress code is professional, then I should turn up in a professional dress code. A lot of clients nowadays have it dressed down, but I would still turn up for that first meeting professionally because I want to feel that I am representing myself professionally. If they say no need to turn up like this next time, then I will dress down accordingly to them. But first time, I always go in business attire. On video, this is now even more important. So this to me is quite a relaxed environment. It's a training environment. Therefore, I have a shirt, I don't have a tie on, and I haven't got a jacket on, okay? Depending on the client and the client I was going to meet would depend on the type of attire I'd be wearing. So if I was meeting with a really big blue chip type organization and a bank, etc., I would generally be sat here in a tie with a jacket on speaking to my client because that's what I'm expecting my client to be almost like. If I know it's going to be slightly more relaxed than that, the least I would do is take my jacket off or not have a tie on. But I would always have a business shirt on to make sure that I am dressed accordingly. Because now over video, it is important that you set the right expectations from day one and they set the right view of how you look. So checking these things is really important. And it's simple things. And simple things like making sure your shirt's ironed. Even though it's on a video, it may pick up that it's not ironed. I mean, it's a great thing at the moment. You only have to iron the front of your shirt rather than back and sleeves because you're not really going to see the sleeves. But making sure that you are dressed accordingly, having a shave, etc. are all important. Making sure that you are audio connected is all important to these whole things. So checks are really important to make sure you've got the right thing ready to go and it's all sent across. I always prepare for a meeting, and I always prepare for a meeting to make sure that I'm going to win, and I set my objectives that I want to win in that meeting straight away. So the preparation starts, as I said, to get or to set an agenda. The client knows what's expected, and if required, I can do some prep as well. So if I know what the client's expecting, I can start to prep, because sometimes when I send an agenda across, a client will come back to me and add things to the agenda. Once I know that's happening, I know my client is either eager to buy or is getting more and more ingrained in my recruitment processes than before, because they're now asking questions. So opening up an agenda and sending an agenda starts to really pull the client towards you and starts to show how professional you are. It starts to differentiate you from other recruiters who don't send agendas. I want to understand my goals and my objectives. I want to know what I want to achieve from the meeting, and I'm going to set my questions out accordingly to that. I want to make sure that whatever I'm trying to achieve from that meeting, that I make sure I ask the questions that are relevant to that. I want to make sure that I hit every goal and every objective. If I'm just going to a meeting and I have no goals and objectives, then what am I actually trying to achieve? So I must have goals and objectives to achieve. I want to research the company. And I want to research the company for common ground. I want to know what my client does. I want to look for people that we both know, because common ground becomes a real easy icebreaker. And so using LinkedIn sometimes becomes a real opportunity for me. And I've used LinkedIn in very numerous different ways, but using it for what LinkedIn was actually originally designed for, linking people together. So I've sometimes, when I'm meeting clients, I'll look at who they know and who I know, and I'll ring people that they know and I know to get further background information on the person. If I'm trying to get into a client to meet them, I'll sometimes get one of the people that I know who know them to make that introduction and help smooth the waves of that meeting to make sure that meeting happens. So researching the client for common ground means that once we start talking to each other, we can start pulling things in from our common background, which bonds us tighter together. I've said this before on these sales courses, that how often have you been in a pub or at a party or somewhere and a friend brings somebody else? And there's a little bit of coolness between you, the pair of you, because you don't really know each other. It's a little bit standoff. It's maybe a little bit awkward until that person mentions either somebody or something that you have got an association with. That's common ground. And you know exactly what happens when that presents itself. You start to talk about that subject and that common ground. And that means it becomes a little bit easier because they know someone that you know, etc., etc. So using that is really important. I want to rehearse potential objectives. I think what they might object to, and I plan my answers. They might never occur, but it's better to be prepared than not. So I will always plan objectives that's like to come up in a meeting and have objections covered instantly. I want to make sure that I shape the questions I want to ask before I'm going. And what I mean by shape the questions, I'm thinking about what the client does and what the client talks like. So I'll be then going onto their website and looking at the terminology they're using, so that I'll be using the similar sort of terminology. So I'm shaping my questions before I'm going, so I don't leave anything to chance. I'm speaking their language, so I'm being more thorough rather than just speaking generics. They may be calling things slightly different. You know, I always looked at, I was an IT recruiter. So were they calling their people analyst programmers, or were they calling them developers, etc.? So I want to make sure I was using the right terminology with them constantly, because it shows that I actually cared a little bit about their business. Once I start to shape questions, again, I'd start to rehearse the answers to those questions. And I want to understand what they may come back to me. It may come back to me as an objection. It may come back to me with some information. And I want to sort of make sure that I was ready to have secondary questions constantly going into them to pull more information out from the client. I want to make things like service, cost, value had been covered, and that I had a strong answer ready for them if they were going to question my service or my value or my costs. So I was always making sure that when the questions that I was asking would create that type of opportunity, that they could come back to me and ask questions, and therefore I could then satisfy their desire and their need to know information from me. As we talk about objectives later on in this course, because to me an objection is a cry for help. An objection is a selling signal to you to actually move forward rather than a blocker. So we've got to start to think about that meetings bring objections. And that's why a lot of consultants don't go to meetings, because they don't like to handle objections. But to me, that objection is a cry for more information. It's a cry that they want to find out more about your business and how you can help them deliver what they need to do. So you need to know your product and your service offering inside out. If you know your product and service offering inside out, it means that what you can be able to do is prepare to walk away if the client doesn't meet your terms that you are selling and your terms that you are presenting to your client. You need to make sure that you know your product and your service offering and you understand the value of that proposition that you're giving to your client, and therefore you're shaping the questions. Therefore, you should be shaping your proposition to your client to make sure you know exactly where you are. But you need to have an objective that you need to achieve. If you're not going to achieve those objectives, where is your walk away point? Are you gutsy enough to walk away, or do you stay and drop your pants accordingly just to make right with the client? Or do you hold your ground and walk away? We've talked about again that this morning about doing the right things for clients. If we're going to continually get into a price war, then we're not adding value to the client. We're not adding value at all. All we're doing is lessening and cheapening our service. So we need to prepare to walk away at some point. So set target actions for the next meeting. Once we've got where we need to set actions and agree those for the next meeting. So we need to make sure I've got a pen, a pad, a business cards, and they are still a thing, business card, and any material that I can leave with a client, okay, that the client will remember me by. I want to make sure when I walk in, I'm ready to go. So I have all these things prepared before I even walk through the door. Video is a new thing. So video checks. If I'm doing this via video, how do we greet each other? Because we can't greet each other with a handshake. So do I have a new way of greeting each other on video? Your audio in the background, is it noisy? I use headphones like this. Why? Because it blocks out any noise in the house. If Amazon come, as they often do, ringing on the bell and the dogs start to bark, it isn't picked up by anybody else. I look at the light, and the light today is quite hard because it's a very hot day and there's light shining through my window, and at different times of day I get different light. So sometimes I'll close it. Sometimes I'll put a backing on my video because that prevents the light from the background. Today's nice and light, so we can get a nice light background. So I want to prepare for the presentation just in case. So I prepare a presentation just in case the client wants to see something, and I can pull that up on screen straight away and drop that into the conversation. Let me talk about this, Mr. Client. In fact, I've got a presentation I can show you, especially when we start talking selling our service and coming over objections. If I've got a presentation that is very quick and easy to tailor, how much more professional does that look when I'm talking to a client and I'm talking through a presentation, similar to the way we are talking through the presentation today from there. So I make sure that all these things are prepared and I'm looking after all these things. So why spend time though preparing? I'm often told, isn't one client meeting the same as the other? And I'm told that quite a lot. The reason why I prepare is because it sharpens my mind. And it sharpens my mind because I always think, I'm an ex-athlete, and I think I want to train for every event in order to stay on top of my game. So we should be training for every client meeting and preparing every client meeting as if it's a new game. It stops me being complacent. If I miss one simple thing, it can hugely decrease your chance of actually making the placement. So it stops me being complacent. It means I have to be really on the ball constantly. And all the way through my career, I've always been absolutely on the ball. Every client meeting I've gone to, I haven't gone in with a slapdash approach. So it stops me being really complacent. You can demonstrate to your client your professionalism. Every agency tells clients that their competitors are poor, that they are the best in the marketplace, or something along those lines. How you actually present yourself and demonstrate yourself to your client in this meeting will either confirm that or back up the client's thoughts that you're just another agency, just another cowboy. So we need to make sure that we can demonstrate to our client that we are as good as we say we are. And therefore, how we plan for our meetings and how we prepare for our meetings is really important. By having a plan, you know what you need to achieve. And by knowing what you need to achieve, you know the structure of the meeting and how the structure should take place. And the structure means that you control the meeting and you can track the meeting. It means if the client drags you off in some direction or down a blind alley, you can bring the client back to where you left your structure and carry on and not miss anything. So really, proper planning prevents poor performance. It leaves nothing to chance. And I'm sure there's lots of other people that will put another P in that as well, but it's absolutely about leaving nothing to chance. So, the meeting itself. If you've done your preparation, the question I always ask is, when does the meeting actually start? When does the meeting start between you and the client? And I get lots of different answers to this question. I get the meeting starts when I meet the client. The meeting starts when I'm in the room with the client. To me, the meeting starts as soon as you step on site. You are being valued. From how you park, how you treat people, how you dress is being valued. So we need to make sure that when we start the meeting, we start as soon as we're going on site. And I usually start my meeting in my car or on the train or however I'm getting to the meeting. So again, if I'm now meeting by video, I'll usually start it 20 minutes, 30 minutes before, and I'll start that meeting in my head. I'll be going through all the things that I need to make sure that I've got. I'm going through everything that I've done to make sure I'm absolutely right. So the meeting to me starts way before I've actually met the client. It starts as soon as I'm walking on site is where the meeting starts. Because what happens is, as soon as you step on site, you might meet the client. How many people have seen those stupid videos of people speaking to people, being rude to them, and then they walk through the door and they meet the receptionist, and the receptionist says, yes, so-and-so with you a moment, and the person walks out and it's the same person that you've been rude to or you've cut up, etc., etc. How many clients have got CCTV? And I can tell you a genuine true story. I met the Bravissimo company who make bras at the Times Top 100 do. I had the pleasure of sitting on their table, and both our companies, both CP and Bravissimo, we were one, I think we came in the top 20 or top 30 of the Times Top 100 that year. And I obviously talked business to them, and I got a meeting to go meet them in their Leamington Spa office. So off I went to meet them in their Leamington Spa office about 2 weeks later. As I walked in, it was an unmanned entrance. So I picked up the phone and I spoke to someone. They said, yes, they'll be with you in 2 minutes was the call. As I look round, there's a couple of seats in the corner, a glass coffee table. On the glass coffee table is every volume of catalogues that Bravissimo had produced since it started. Round the top of the walls were pictures of all the models modelling Bravissimo's wear. In the corner was a cabinet, and in the cabinet was all the awards that they'd won and everything that they did. And so I usually don't sit down before I meet a client, because I like to meet a client stand up so I can get full eye contact with the client. The client left me there for 25 minutes. And then she came out and she said, do you know what? You're one of the most patient people I've met, because most men, when they come into here, don't realize there's a camera in the top corner, and I'd not spotted the camera in the top corner, and they instantly open the catalogues ogling the ladies in the catalogues, etc., 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 and then feel really stifled when the door opens, they're putting it down really, really quickly. So you completely ignored it all. You just kept a very professional manner and a very professional way of doing business. In fact, what you did was you went to the cabinet and read all our awards and kept reading through our awards. And it was really sort of strange that she said, what we do is we evaluate the salespeople that come into us. If they do that thing and open up all the catalogues and start ogling them, we generally don't want to do business with them because we don't feel that they've got our best interests at heart. They're here for a completely different. So I make sure that I do the right things when I step on site. So as soon as your video starts, though, therefore you have a different problem, don't you? How do you introduce yourself on a video? What do you do on our video? Because you haven't got the usual sort of driving onto site, meeting people, going through a waiting room. So you've got to create a really good opening line as soon as the video starts to greet your client, to put your client at ease and work with your client. So we've got to work in that way very, very quickly. What should you consider when we're going on into a client meeting? Meeting the gatekeeper, meeting the receptionists, meeting people outside is always important because you never know how important they really are. And again, another true story is I did an awful lot of business with Nissan, and Nissan people all dress in what they call the Nissan Blues. Same uniform, whether you're the MD or the owner of Nissan or whether you are a cleaner in Nissan, you wear the same uniform. And all they have is a little name badge on the uniform. It doesn't tell you what they do. And therefore, everyone greets everyone and treats everybody with respect, which is what it's about. So again, if you're going onto the marketplace, you don't know who the receptionist, the gatekeeper is, etc. You don't know how are they ingrained in the business, what have you. So you've got to make sure that you are professional to everybody. In the waiting room, whether it be live or virtual, make sure that if you've got clients in your waiting room, I was on a Zoom waiting call the other day, and the client had obviously used his Zoom video for a personal quiz, but written in the waiting room was all the instructions for the quiz and everything to do with a bit of banter, which was obviously between him and his friends. But I'm a client that he'd never met. Now that could have been quite worse. It could have been a lot worse than that. So you've got to be careful what you're doing on video to make sure if you've got clients in waiting rooms, what does the client see? What do they look at before you invite them into the meeting from there? So waiting room is really important. But in a live waiting room, what I also make sure that I'm doing is in the waiting room, as I said, I never sit down in a waiting room or read the paper. I want to be stood up because when the client comes in, I want to meet the client face to face, eyeball to eyeball, and shake my hand straight away. I don't want to be getting up, putting things down, etc., etc. So I want to make sure that I'm always up on that way. I want to make sure that my screen and my backdrop are ideal. I don't want to make sure anything is rude in there. I want to make sure my kids know not to come in, etc. And yes, it could be a great icebreaker, but we've got to make sure what we're doing, okay? So the first contact with our client is really important. And that first contact really, really is about that eye contact before the handshake, or a smile if it's over video, okay? And that could be your virtual handshake, a really good smile. So we've got to make sure we're doing the right things. And obviously if you're meeting face to face, we have that little journey to the meeting room where we can build rapport. So what are your icebreakers? How do we deal with your icebreakers? What are we doing from there? It is about, okay, making sure we are creating an opportunity to speak to the client there and start that rapport building straight away. So the structure. So who starts the meeting after the icebreaker and the chit chat stops? You need to make sure we start the meeting properly. So the structure is, your agenda will give you the structure of how you start the meeting. You actually should start the meeting and take control. So once you've gone through some chit chat, you then call the meeting to order and you control the meeting. You outline the structure using your agenda of what you want to talk about and what sort of things you want to learn from the client during that meeting. So it makes sure that you use an agenda because that sets expectations early doors. You want to explain what your objectives are. And I always use the diamond principle from selling, and we've used this all the way through these training courses on various different things. So remember, the top of the diamond principle is your opening benefit statement, and that's what you're just going through here. You're taking control. You've gone through this, the chit chat, the icebreaker. You're now taking control. The opening benefit statement should spell out exactly what we're trying to do with the client and introduce the specifics that we're trying to meet from the meeting point of view. We then want to go into the fact find so we can find out and get the client to tell us what you want to know about the client. You want to help them find the ideal candidate, and to find the ideal candidate, you need to know everything about the client and what's going on within that client base. So we need to start really working hard in that fact find to understand everything from a technical point of view, from a personal point of view, from a company point of view. Everything we talk about needs to be in that fact find. Before I even start to move on to selling my position, or selling my solution, sorry, I need to test my position. So I need to go back over every single point that we've talked about, reconfirming that we've not missed anything, making sure that I can solve their recruitment issues, and making sure I understand what their current recruitment process is all the way through. So I work really hard at testing my position before I move on to sell, because if I move on to sell too early and I've missed certain points, then I'm at a disadvantage when it comes to working with the client. Once I know what I've got, then I can start to sell my service, and right at the bottom, I can start to do the close. So the fact find to me is the real important part of the business. It's the business end of the recruitment. The more I find out now, the more I can start to work with the client. The more, once I walk out of here, I can make a decision whether or not I want to work with the client. And that puts us in a whole different position from there. So I want to know the buying manager. I want to know how long they've worked there, what working there is like and why they work there, what they like about it. What would it be like working for them? I want to know what the company's like. How old is the company turnover, the staff? What's the company's plans for the next 12 months from a corporate point of view, but also from a manning point of view? I want to understand the manager's department. I want to understand the number of staff they've got, the skills they've got, the current projects they're on, what their current goals are. And I'm looking for issues. I want to know what their expansion plans are. So I'm always looking for all of these things through the fact find constantly, because I want to understand exactly what my clients need. And all the way through this, I'm looking for issues that I can help and cure. I want to know the current company's recruitment methodology. And I usually ask this in a number of ways. I want to find out how and who they use to recruit. I want to understand their interview methods. I want to know what success they've had. I also want to know what failures they've had. I want to know what success to them looks like from a recruitment point of view, and I want to know what failure looks like from a recruitment point of view. I want to know what they like about recruiting and dislike. I want to understand everything, because this starts to then hit the client's hot buttons. Once I start to understand those things, then I can really start to drive home when I come to my sale, how I can compete with other agencies and outperform other agencies. What I do not do is, if during the fact find, the client announces that they have positions that they'd like me to work on, I do not take a job specification and I do not agree terms at this point. I will park this to one side and I will come back to it at a later date. So I want to make sure that I'm doing the right things. I should not take a job spec during this here. So I've got one massive don't. Do not sell during the fact find. If you start to sell during the fact find, you're going to miss lots and lots of points. And this is where I see so many recruiters fail. Once they feel the client has given them a buying signal, they jump all over that buying signal and they start selling a solution straight away, rather than trying to understand the whole process. And they're not understanding the whole process. When they start to try to deliver to the client, they start to fall short because they've missed certain parts. So it's important we do not sell during the fact find. We want to become, and I always class this, we want to become that sort of ninja. We want to become that ninja of the fact find. So to do that, we don't sell straight away because I want to recap the position. I want to recap everything that the client has talked about. So I'm testing my position. So the client, is there anything that I've missed that will help me recruit for you? And I go through everything that the client has spoken about. I want to show that I've listened. I want to recap so they know I understand exactly what they talk about. I want to identify things that they may have missed that they think are important. I also want to understand whether I have missed anything that they deem is important. So I'm going to really sort of show things from there. And I go through everything. And at the end of that, I will always then start to ask, have I got myself what I would class a shopping list? So I got a shopping list to sell against. I want to show that I've missed nothing. And I want to highlight any potential objections to myself that may come out. And I'm listening here constantly for potential objections and potential areas that may become a little bit sticky when I come to sell my solution to them. And I want to know how I can address them. But it also gives me time to think and formulate what I'm going to sell. But it also gives the client time to think and formulate what they have potentially missed. So that testing of the position again and going back over everything, although might only take 5 or 6 minutes, okay, and you may have spent 25, 30 minutes on a fact find, that is the really important thing, because if they give you one more piece of information from there, then you've got one more piece of information that you didn't have before. And that means that when you start to search for things, you're searching by design and not by luck. So what type of questions do we ask during the fact find, as it is the most important? And we'll go through these really quickly because most people understand questions very, very well. We want to go open questions. Hypothetically, what happens if in the end, if the client, doesn't happen, what's going to happen there? So the hypothetical question, past tense, when was the last time? What happened last time this happened? What was the outcome? So on projects, on things that they've done, but also on recruitment, when the last time you recruited for this position, what happened? We want to know what the pitfalls were. Probing questions, tell me about how does that work, are really, really sort of great questions to get more information. And as I've said, when we talk about interviewing candidates or clients, tell me more. That's interesting. Can you expand that a little bit more? That sounds interesting. What happened? Anything that gets them to expand on what you've given gives you more information. The more information you're armed with, the easier it is for you to close the client and sell the right solution. I want to ask closed questions so I understand and I can close off each individual subject before moving on. So these are the type of questions that I would ask all the way through a fact find. Very similar to interview questions, etc., because really this is just the mirror of an interview with a candidate. So now I come to sell my solution. We've gathered lots of our information on our client, and it's now time to match our services to our client. So usually the things that everyone sells are the following. We sell features. So we want to know your company USPs. You want to know exactly what it is that your client is like to buy from your company. What truly differentiates you? What is your unique selling point all the way through? You need advantages, because an advantage brings the feature to life. It tells the client what the feature actually does. And to stand out from the crowd, you need to really make sure that your advantages really highlight your features. We then start to look at benefits, and that gives the client the reason why they should be buying from you. So whether you're doing interview face-to-face every candidate, what does that mean to a client? What's the benefit to the client of you interviewing every candidate face-to-face? If you're doing behavioral tests, what's the benefit to the client? What's the advantage? What's the benefit? Too many people sell features on their own, but never sell the advantages and the benefits. Benefits save the client time, money, and hassle, and it reduces the cost of recruitment over time and give the client peace of mind. Your fact find and testing your position phase should have produced a shopping list for you to sell against. You should be prepared. Your preparation will ensure that you have the answers for any potential objection that they come up with during this phase. So really, as I was saying, your objections are a cry for more information, and they are buying signals. So as we're going through our sale, we need to make sure that our features and our benefits, features, advantages, and benefits are hitting the client's hotspots that they highlighted to you during the fact find. We need to create a brilliant presentation, especially if we're doing it over video. As I said before, if I can create a video presentation and I can just create a link and open that link up and share my screen with a client, and I could do this in all sorts of different ways. I could do it securely on my website, I could do a portal, I could do it on a USB stick, anything that I can do that can give my client a view that I am more professional than other people, the better I am going to be. The difference that I find when you start to present to a client using a presentation is they become engaged in that presentation. They become engaged in what you're talking about. It becomes more realistic to them rather than you just talking to them. So you have to gauge whether your client is that type of client or something who just wants talking to, and drive from there. The final part with every sale is you get objections. And as we said, objections is all about handling the objection and handling what's coming up from there. So I always say, don't panic. Okay, objections are a good thing. They provide clarity and they're a request for information. Don't ignore them, because they are a buying signal. It's telling you the client is interested but doesn't understand yet what or how you can help them achieve their objectives. And that is the part of the sell that most people fail at. They don't understand that an objection is not something that client's pushing back. It's their lack of knowledge of your solution. They don't understand that. So I always have a rule on objections. Certainly the first objection is what I find is usually a bit of a red herring, and sometimes you can ignore the objection, because if it's a true objection, they'll restate it again. So sometimes they'll object to various different things, but is it a genuine true objection? However, if it's a true objection, we need to understand how to handle that objection and work from there. So if it's a true objection, I need to acknowledge the objection. If I acknowledge the objection, then I need to repeat it back to the client so I fully understand. And I need to understand now whether I'm going to address it now or I'm going to park it and cover it later. If I address it now, then I'm going to cover everything that the client's talked about. If I'm not going to address it, I can turn it and say, Mr. Client, I understand exactly what you're talking about. I can cover that in a later part of my sale. Let me come back to it. Let me make a note of it. And if I'm making notes, which everyone should be doing, I'll be ringing that note straight away to make sure that I'm going to come back to it and I know exactly what's in there. Okay? Do not shy away. Empathize with your client. So empathize with your client and don't be confrontational. If you become confrontational with your client on this, you're on a loser straight away. So you need to empathize with your client. You need to restate the objection. And I always try this as a method of feel, felt, found. This is a great way of overcoming objections, and I find I can do most objections using this process. I understand how you feel, Mr. Client. I understand what he's doing, so I empathize him with it. Some of my other clients felt exactly the same way when I started dealing with them and talked about this type of recruitment solution. So I'm saying that other clients have felt the other way. So he's now not alone. He starts to understand that other clients have started to feel this. Over time, I have found, and then you can start to sell the solution that you've brought with that client. So if they bring an objection where you've already handled that objection with another client and you found a really good solution, what a great way of confirming your skill set. What great affirmation of your business. I did this with another client, and what they found was this X, Y, Z. And so I can give them quantifiable evidence now that overcomes their objection really, really quickly. So using objections is important. Shying away from them is a coward's way. Being confrontation gets you nowhere. So always make sure you cover your objections. It is a cry for help. It is the most important part of the sale. If I get to the end of the sale and I haven't got any objections, I start to question. I can't believe I'm that perfect that I've done the perfect sell and I've not had any objections. So I start to think and panic, what's the client going to ask me? Why aren't they asking me objections? So I'm almost all the time asking for objections to make sure I've got to the end of the sale perfectly. And at the end of any meeting, I want to close with actions. I want to make sure that I'm closing and looking for a win-win situation. When you went in, I knew what my goals are and I know my walk-away points are. So when I'm quoting my fees, I'm not quoting and being ashamed of my quote at all. I know exactly what I was going in for. So if I was going to go in and quote a high fee or retain business, I would quote that, and I'd quote that with pride because I knew exactly what I was doing and I believed in my sale. Selling, after all, is that transfer of enthusiasm. So I need to be proud to quote. If a client has sat with me for an hour and a half, and that's usually how long these meetings are, then that's transfer of enthusiasm. I'm proud of what I'm quoting. I don't whisper my quote. I don't shy away from it. I was with a person the other day who was very proud about their business, and they were talking about selling stuff to me, and I asked them the price. It took me probably about another 35 minutes and a couple of emails to actually get a genuine price out of them. And why? Because they were embarrassed of their price. It was so high. I couldn't believe how high it was. So their transfer of enthusiasm had started and then waned. So when you give your quote, you've got to be proud and deliver the quote with passion. You've got to really work there. Once you deliver the quote, as with all sales, it is now a waiting game. Deliver the quote and shut up. Be quiet. You want to give your client time to think. Too many people listen and sit there in silence, and the silence eeks away at them, and they don't like long silences, and so they start to speak straight away and start to chip at their own sale and then start to lower their costs. So wait for the client to come back to you. Wait for the client to answer. They may be just thinking about it. They may be playing the same game as you. Let's see who's the best at playing the game. But whatever you do, do not drop your pants. If you suddenly drop your pants, then you are in a world of trouble. Once you start dropping really quickly, the client will push your price down as far as they can possibly get. So if you are into a negotiation, you need to look to trade variables. What can you trade one at a time? If you've been on the pitching course, you'd understand how we can trade variables and what we can do to trade variables. So if I offer you X, Mr. Client, can you give me this? We do not trade everything all at once. And what I mean by that, if you've gone in at 25% and the client says, I can only pay 15%, if you suddenly drop to 15%, you've traded all your goodwill away. You've traded all your highlights away. So we want to make sure we trade one at a time, variables. And we need to understand what those variables are. So before we've gone into the meeting, we need to have those variables from there. So once you've traded the variable, you need to agree and reconfirm it verbally and later in writing. I need to make sure that if I do have a walkaway point, I need to do it professionally. And I need to do it professionally there in front of the client. I need to tell the client why I'm not going to work with the client or why I'm walking away. So I'm going to do it professionally. And then I will write back to my client and tell them what they're doing. If I have an agreement, okay, and I've won the business, I now will take a comprehensive job spec. I've agreed my terms. I've agreed verbally what we're doing. Now I can take the job spec. There's little point you taking a job spec first and then getting to the end and then saying my fees are this, and they go, I'm not paying that. What a waste of time taking a job spec. So make sure you've got an agreement on your fees before you move forward from there. Once you've gained full commitment and control, okay, you need to make sure everything goes out in writing, and you need to make sure that you have your terms and conditions signed. If you're bright, you'll have taken a set of terms and conditions with you that they can sign there and then. So to conclude, you need to meet your client, or meeting your client separates you from your competition. Meeting your clients creates a stronger bond. Meeting your clients creates a deeper understanding of the client, and a deeper understanding will ensure that you can sell with enthusiasm when the moment is required. Preparation is the key to a successful client meeting. And first impressions count, irrespective of whether that's a first impression walking onto a client site or whether you're turning your video on. That first impression counts. So if you turn your video on and you're looking the other way, or you're having a drink, or you're not there, the client's just in, you've disappeared off screen, okay, it's really important. Those first impressions do truly count. Having a structure will enable you to gather more information, and it's the control is key to that. So having a structure means sure you keep in control and you never get lost within your sale. The fact find is the most important part of the process. The fact finding, everything that we do, whether it be an interviewing a candidate, taking a job spec, or talking to a client in a client meeting about their business, that fact find gives you all the information that you are going to use to help recruit the right person for their business. So if you do a poor fact find, you will find poor people. And I always call this, from a technology point of view, called GIGO. Garbage in gives garbage out. So if you put garbage into your PC, you'll get garbage out of your PC. Same if you put garbage into your fact find, you'll get garbage out at the end. And garbage out at the end means poor quality candidates that the client will never take on board. You need to test your position before you start to sell. That is the key to the fact find, to make sure you've not missed anything and work from there. Sell features and benefits that cover all the client's needs and ticks off their shopping list. And the features, advantages, and benefits are really important, because features don't sell themselves. You need to give the benefits. Once you present your price, shut up and stand your ground, and trade variables one at a time if you have to trade variables. So that is old school client meeting with new school views of what's going on. To do a client meeting in that fashion, it will take you an hour, potentially an hour and a half. But I can tell you now, it will be the most informative hour and a half, and the best spent hour and a half you have with your client, because it will set the relationship off on the right level, and it will ensure that you can start to truly push recruitment services at your client at a higher cost and make sure you compete and outperform your competitors. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer some questions. There's some questions been coming through whilst I've been asked. Helen Barnes, ask for what you want when you have your foundations in. Absolutely. Once you've put solid foundations in, you can start to ask what you want. Ashley's right, said on the flip side, I think this was talking about when I was talking about Bravissimo. On the flip side of that, if it's not rude for any potential client to keep you waiting for 25 minutes without informing you first that they are running behind. And I think you're right there, Ashley. It's right. But I think they were trying to put me a test because I knew them and we'd had quite a bit of banter. And I think they were trying to put me to a test on those sort of things. So I think they kept me over long on that sort of point of view. But you're right. You know, the client should be informing you. Maybe that's a type of sort of indication of your relationship with the client if they're not informing you of that type of thing. So we've got to make sure that we're doing the right thing all the time. So that's the end of this week's webinar. Next week's webinar has been set, so I'll send that out ASAP. If anyone's got any questions, feel free to drop me an email or drop me a line or call me at any time. I wish you all the health and happiness. Happy Wednesday, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you very much, and goodbye.